everyone. What a pleasure it is to be back at CEF. I think it's a wonderful occasion to gather all together, and what an amazing job the team has done. So congratulations to everyone. My name is Farida Al-Agami, and it's honestly a great pleasure and an honor for me to moderate this panel today, which I'm going to be biased. It's probably one of the most interesting panels that happens at this event, at this fantastic event. Before we get started, I think perhaps as we are at the Entrepreneurship Startup Festival, the question begs, why are we talking about family businesses at all? You know, what's the role of this panel here today? And I just want to remind us all that, of course, family businesses are still between 70 to 90% of the private sector in the Gulf. So when we talk about entrepreneurial ecosystem, family businesses are truly one of the anchors and one of the pillars, actually both an anchor and a pillar, that's going to be interesting, of this ecosystem. So what we want to do today with this fantastic panel is discuss the role of entrepreneurship in family businesses, the role of entrepreneurship in longevity of commercial entities. So let's get started. Halima, Abir, Ali, and Adil, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Again, I'm very excited about this panel. So to kick off, I know we've heard your bios, and that's always a little bit impersonal. So I'd love for you to very briefly introduce yourselves to our audience. And maybe you can tell us what's the most entrepreneurial thing you have done last week. So we're all very curious to hear that. I'll get started at the far left and then move down the row. So Halima, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Well, our field is real estate and construction. So if I go too much into detail, it's going to be boring. So I'm going to try to make it as fun as possible. I'm a very creative person, and working with mortar and cement can be quite boring if you don't try to be creative with it. I wouldn't say it was last week. It was going on until last week. I formed an arm in our business that goes into niche, beautiful bathrooms, if you can say.
Niche, beautiful bathrooms.
Yes.
I think that is a very entrepreneurial thing to do in a week.
Yes, and so far we've had quite a few projects, okay, and going down to details. And usually when we work with big projects, it's easier to build a building, to have a building, construct a building, everything. It's easier than to plan something up to the customer's taste. And it was difficult in the beginning, but we really enjoyed every step of it. So I'm trying to make a boring thing not so boring. So that's the most entrepreneurship thing we've done.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Halima, for that example. Welcome. Avir, please.
Hi, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here today, by the way, and thank you to Shira and Najla Al-Madfa for inviting us all to participate. Entrepreneurship and family businesses are not often looked at together, but I think one of the ways that family-operated businesses, which is going to be, I'm going to differ with Adil now when we're talking about it, the details. Family-operated businesses often operate as entrepreneurs in that we are involved in the larger strategic thinking and in the daily, like, we need to pay the vacation pay for this employee who's leaving this afternoon on a flight, and you need to sign this off or sign that off. And even though you're sitting in a board meeting, you're still doing this tiny little thing. So you zoom out and zoom in, which is, I think, the closest thing to being entrepreneurial that you get from my perspective. So last week, I was literally looking to hire a manager for a multi-million-dollar investment and new project in the Maldives, where we have been awarded an entire lagoon to set up resorts and a factory and everything. And the next meeting, I'm resolving a problem between the PRO and the HR manager, who are arguing about whether or not, someone answered the phone. So that zoom out and zoom in is what keeps you very grounded and keeps that entrepreneurial spirit.
I like that. I think that's a very accurate depiction, and I'm sure your fellow panelists can confirm that zoom out and zoom in is a reality. Thank you, Amir. Ali.
I tend to agree with you. I think what's key for family businesses to prosper and be able to grow is to not lose the entrepreneurial spirit. I come from a family business where second generation, my father is the founder, and although it's a large group and we have many units under construction and we continue to grow, it's still very much operated in an entrepreneurial sense. And when we have special projects or special markets which we would like to enter, we sort of make a small special task force. So teams of 5-6 people, and they tend to operate like a startup. So you don't have the bureaucracy, etc., that goes with larger family businesses. If to answer your question about something entrepreneurial, it wasn't last week, but so my son is 15 months old, and his caregiver went on leave. So I went and my wife actually brought in a caregiver from one of these companies as a night nurse. So, like a week or 2 weeks in, I sit with her and I'm like, how much are you paying this woman? And when she told me the price, I was shocked. So I went and asked the lady, I'm like, what's your salary? And the margin on the business was like 70%. So we have facility management, manpower, B2C business. And we set up a division straight away. We said, you know what, forget about just supplying cleaners to people. Let's give them night nurses and baby care and nursing services. And I think it's very important as an entrepreneur, when you spot an opportunity like that, just act on it. You have nothing to lose, try your best.
I think that's actually a very good lesson, because ultimately, what is entrepreneurship? It's solving problems. And I think that's exactly what it is from a behavioral perspective. Last but not least, Adil. I should say Dr. Adil, sorry.
Thank you. I'm still not used to Dr. Adil, but yeah. So my name is Adil Alzarooni. I run a couple of family offices, of which I structured both, and run also a venture studio of mine. And the fields that we are in the first family office, we are predominantly in healthcare, education, financial services, and consumerism technology. The second family office, we are predominantly in F&B and FMCG. And in the venture studio, we are predominantly in mass education across different themes, which are health and wellness, investments, and gaming, basically. What is an innovative activity that we've done last week? I think I'm mostly proud of launching a venture studio at Shams, Sharjah Media City, with Dr. Khalid here.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
So that's nice, because I am very passionate about the power of venture studios in hammering or attending to the global stats when it comes to the success rates of businesses. I don't know if you are aware, but the global statistics of the last 200 years is that 9 out of 10 businesses fail within the first 3 years. That's not a very piece of information, nice one to deliver on. But then that also highlights the power of family businesses, because they are one of the 10, the ones that had made it. So they have in their DNA a good set of capabilities within their context in order to find successes in a better way than many others. So that is a wealth of knowledge and expertise and capabilities within context that startups can use.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Adil. I think you're touching upon a lot of things that hopefully we can cover in our short conversation today. By the way, I don't see a timer, which is great for me, because I'll just keep going. But okay, yes, I can see it now. All right, thank you. Oh, that's a pity. All right. So one of the things that we want to talk about is really kind of the role that family businesses play in creating a positive ecosystem for thriving entrepreneurship in our region. But before we get to that point, taking over a legacy is actually quite a difficult thing. And I think in our preparation conversation, Abir, also, you mentioned that, what does it mean to take over basically someone else's startup? Because if we think of family businesses as having been startups at some point, and then a couple of decades later, you come in and you have to take over that person's legacy and vision and startup. How does that feel, and what does that do to you for your career?
Well, this is kind of the interesting thing about, the company that I help run is called Gulfcraft, and I'm the deputy managing director under my father, who is the chairman. I'm also the chair of the Leisure Marine Association for the Middle East and North Africa, which is a little bit strange because it's not a traditionally female environment. And I grew up around this company, I played in the factory in the summers and what have you. And when I went to university, my father is also Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. And I grew up also in the world of diplomacy and the embassy and all of that. And I went to university and I wanted to get my master's in law and diplomacy. I wanted to go into diplomacy. And I was pushed back. And then I said, well, I want to go into the family business and build boats. And I was pushed back. And I ended up going into banking. And I got married and I had kids and I stopped working. My kids were a little bit older. My father came to me and he said, Baba, I need you to come into the business. Come clean up, is what he said. He said, come clean up. Because I was the person he trusted the most with what he wanted to do. And so I came in and I remember the guys around me started saying things like, we can get her out of here in 3 months. We can get rid of her in 3 months. And they couldn't get rid of me. And what happened was that I ended up with a power of attorney that no one expected. They're like, you can do anything he can do. He gave you all of his powers. And I said, yeah, but that's the trust, because he understands that I know what he wants. And I will sit and say something in a meeting, and one of the older managers who's been around for 30 years will say to me, all right, Mr. Al-Shali, because it's my father speaking. That's what they hear, you know? So that legacy, I take it very, very seriously. Yeah. And I know, and even when I sit on the Leisure Marine Association, I get, I can get my point across when I sit in meetings with regulatory authorities, because there's a feeling of there's something here that is sustainable and long-term and looking at a greater vision. Sure. And that's sort of the link that you can get. Yeah. The legacy for me is very important. I would not be in boat building if it wasn't because I know what my father is looking to do and I understand it and I was raised on that vision and I know how to carry it forward. I know what he would want.
Well, I think that's a very interesting point, Abir. And the question is also, Ali, maybe I'll get to you first. So you have that legacy, someone else's vision, right, initially. How do you make it your own? So what happens when you enter that process and you as an entrepreneur, as a professional, you make it your own? What happens in that process? Are you in that process? And what constitutes that process for you?
Well, to start, it's very hard working with your family. It's not an easy task. But of course, there's no better teacher than your father, your patriarch, who runs the family business. Of course, when you first start in a business, you think you're coming in, you're fresh from university. You want to do all of these changes, which you've learned in the book, and 90% of it, is BS. You throw it out the window. What you learn
this will be edited out from the video.
Fair enough. What you learn on the ground is really what adds value. In a similar way, how you were in the factories when you were a kid, my summer holidays were rotation programs in the business. Weekends were in meetings. So really people say, how long have you been in the business? It's not 10 years, it's 20 years since I was very young.
And I do that with my kids, by the way.
It's the most important
My teenagers intern in the summers in the business.
It's probably the most effective way of instilling that sense of ownership.
Yeah. You get the business sense when you're young. So coming back to your question, of course, in the beginning, there's friction because there's a big gap in thinking. And of course, the older generation will say, who's this kid coming here to give me advice? And you're thinking, but you're old, I know better. And I think it's about bridging that gap. I think what's very important in family businesses is not to come in feeling entitled, which is where we're very lucky because our father runs the ship based on merit. So if you don't perform, there's no diplomacy about it. You're out. And it teaches you the hard way, but it really teaches you how to be successful in what you do. And in family businesses, I think a great way to be entrepreneurial is look for those gaps within the business and then treat them as a startup and try to monetize them and grow them. And that's the policy we apply in Damak.
I think that's a very interesting point, and we'll get to the relationship of family businesses with startups, because inside the family business, there's so many needs and gaps that you could look at and kind of be creative about. Halima, your story is a little different in terms of taking over the legacy. How has it been for you, and what does the legacy mean for you today?
I'm glad Abia and Ali went first, because I'm learning, as I said in the back room, but I'm learning from everyone now. We didn't have the privilege of being mentored. We took on the family business because my father passed away. And what we had to do is we had to imagine their vision. We had to go into the office after trying to clean up everything and try to create the vision that they had for the business, consolidate it, bring it up to date, and pay respect for it. My name is Halim Ahmed La'wais. But the business is called Sultan bin Ali La'wais. There's a reason for it. My uncle never had children, but he raised my father as his son. So one of the legacies is he didn't have children, but we are his children. That's why we named the business after him, whereas we took over after my father. So what we had to do is create that vision, and then my brother and I sat down and we spoke about us being third generation. And as it comes, the third generation are the worst. What we wanted to do is reverse that and have another generation of caretakers and creators. And what we did is create that vision, and it's still ongoing. We're trying to bring it up to date, which is quite difficult. I won't say it's easy. And then bring up the next generation. So currently I'm mentoring my younger brother. He's been mentoring with me for about 6 months. He's going to go into government work, but eventually still be in the business.
You want him back, yeah.
So that there's a succession plan, because I'm going to turn 40 soon.
Mm-hmm.
I will be retiring in the next 10 years, and there has to be a succession plan. I don't plan to be there until
forever.
Forever.
Yeah, of course.
Eventually, I want to make sure that every person in the family who has, as Ali said, the merit to run the business, to know about it, so that we can step down and give them the business with the mentality it requires.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's an interesting question also to ask Dr. Adil, because of course you're an expert on family businesses other than having your own family office. And perhaps a reflection for any startup entrepreneurs in the audience is really, when you have your young business, it's running 6 months, it's running 12 months, and then you see these businesses here on stage that are 50, 60, 70 years old. Longevity is a fascinating concept. And it shows how decades before Halima actually plans to step down, she's already thinking of what happens after me. And I think that's a very valuable reflection for startups as well. So, Dr. Adil, when you speak to families, and you work a lot with different families other than your own, what do you tell them about handing over a legacy? How can that happen? What do you do from an entrepreneurship perspective to hand over a vision or a legacy?
So I try, thank you very much. If you go to academia, there's so much coverage of that, but frankly speaking, what works in reality has to do a lot with the context you are in, because cultures are differ, tie-up with governments differ, businesses differ, the tie-up with society differs. So it changes from a culture to another. But the first thing that I ask families to do to make a handover from a generation to the other generation are 3 or 4 steps. First of all, make sure that all family businesses get their checks in predictable times. They get their checks every 6 months, they'll get off your back.
I agree.
That's before governance, before being a very nice guy.
So pay people. That's
pay
lesson
them,
1.
let them know that their money is coming.
Exactly.
But this is what differs between what you talk about, which is family offices, and actual family businesses. there's a differentiation, because a family business that is run by people within the family and not necessarily in the ownership structure, which is what we have, is different than what you mean, which is when there is a family fund or wealth management fund that all of the family are shareholders in.
Yes. So I agree with you on that. So
I'm going to, just to be transparent, behind the scenes, Adil told everyone, please debate with me. So Abir took it very seriously. I like that.
Yes. You would realize it's never black and white. It's always shades of gray. And there is no absolute truth in many of those social sciences. And these kind of debates really expand your view on things. So it's never like. So first of all, give them their checks.
Yeah.
Second of all, you structure your governance. But always try to structure your governance using a democratic approach whereby the next head of the family is a fatherly figure also. So
or
somebody that
maybe.
everybody would feel does the necessary communication, cares for them and for their kids, so that they see continuity with you. So it's very important for the next generation, in my opinion, to play the fatherly role to the rest of the family. The third concept that I recently started pushing is always have a venture studio on a side. Because new generation in the family or new ideas coming from outside, trying to integrate them into the main business, you will face a lot of struggle. You will clash with the older generation, the younger generation, the financials of the family business. Always, the question of whether to stay focused or diversify, and is it gonna make money? Are we taking too much risk? This much energy and so much money, taking so much risk in the main family business. Better take all of that into a new setup on a side, get the newcomers to come and do their mistakes there, live a few cycles of company building, venture building, failures, go through the stats to understand what works in reality. And once they go through that few years of doing so, they'd be much better value added to the main business of the company. They'll steer it in a better way. Their energy will be better put into the business. So these are the 3 points I usually advocate.
Very good. So if you see venture studios popping up, you know who they were talking to. So we'll blame you, Adil, if we have like 50 venture studios popping up. Great. Since the clock is relentless, it's really evil. Najla, really, seriously, next year, okay? I think what I want to focus on a little bit is this idea of what relationship exists between established traditional family businesses or family firms with a tradition, I wouldn't call them traditional, and the startup ecosystem that we have in our country. I think it's a very interesting question that we still have to research and understand better. So let me start with you, Ali. What's the relationship that you see between established family firms and the startup ecosystem in the region? Just from your some initial thoughts, and then we'll develop it further.
So Mahmoud Adi is sitting here in the front row, and we're good friends. He manages Shuruk. So we have an active family office that invests in businesses and funds primarily, mainly internationally, but a small allocation is for the region. And I'll tell you why we have only a small allocation to the region. Unfortunately, in this part of the world, and I sit on the Emirates Angel Association, so I've seen plenty of companies come and pitch their ideas and they want to raise funds. And I've been on many of those judging panels with them. Now, the problem that young entrepreneurs have over here is they come in comparing their businesses to businesses based in the US. They skip the fact that that's a 300 million population target market with open borders. Over here, it's very different. And I think that's where a big gap exists. The startup ecosystem here, you have some great businesses with some strong leaders who put the effort and they work hard. and you've had success stories. But you also have this big gap with a lot of people coming in and thinking, wow, we can work for 2-3 years and have a $50 million valuation and get out. And that's just not true. In our family business, for example, all of us, me and my siblings, we used to work in the business. We still work in the business, me and my sister. But we have our own businesses on the side, which we run as startups. But we do that in our extra time. And when they become successful, and this is advice I would give to most entrepreneurs, don't quit your day job from day one. You need to put in 18 hours a day consistently if you want to be successful, because we're in a highly competitive ecosystem. So you need to put in the hours during the day, you need to make your salary, and then you need to work on your ideas and your startups on the side. And if you're successful, quit your job and focus on your business. But don't think you're just going to raise funds and sort of sit and work on a startup and that's all you're going to do.
Yeah, I think it's a very important perspective. I feel that we do not, as entrepreneurs, we do not fall in the trap of, let's say, a VC bubble or a sense that, yes, money is easy to get, so just, give everything up. I think it's an interesting perspective to have. Abir, so the way we could look at family businesses' relationship with startups is as investors, either through funds or direct investors, perhaps. They might also use startups to innovate, right? Use their technologies to innovate their own operations, or even be potentially available for an exit. Maybe there are startups in this region that family businesses could, buy down the line and expand their portfolio. What's your take on this relationship and how it's going to evolve?
Well, obviously, many of the family businesses started off as startups with, entrepreneurial activities in mind or mindsets, right? And we're seeing more and more support with incubators across the UAE for smaller startups to start, because I think the methodology has changed from our grandparents or our parents' generation to this generation that's coming up now. The methodology of how you start a business has changed. I think also that there's a growing number of family offices in the UAE and family offices coming in from the UAE as regulations have changed towards how investment funds are handled in this country. And I see more and more family offices coming into the UAE even from abroad.
Very true.
And so obviously that brings the wealth in. It brings in possibilities for investment into all of these younger businesses that are coming out. So there's definitely a link between family offices and investment or buyouts for the startups. But if you start up your business with the mentality that you're going to cash out, that's not necessarily going to be a valuable business, because you have to build in value to that business, and that value is there when you create something meant to be long-standing. A family business is not looking to buy out a startup that's not going to serve a long-term purpose, because the family office is there for a long-term purpose. So there has to be a meeting of minds on that one. You see what I mean?
Absolutely. I think that learning from companies that have survived decades of change is that at the heart of everything is value, is purpose. Why do we exist? And I think it's definitely something that as startups we have to take away from family businesses. Halima, from your perspective, how do you see, as someone who operates her family business, are you looking at startups and you're curious what technologies they have that you could, use, learn from, perhaps acquire?
Our field is quite conventional, so it's difficult to really adopt the same mentality when it comes to startups. So it's either we invest in a portfolio that's managed by somebody else, or we support the services of startups that are organic to the business. I'll give you an example. Tech. We took on an application that helps home finders find units. So this is in a way investing in the ecosystem. There are other services that we require in our business that we do invest in the services. But put in mind, our mentality is not startup and then exit plan, because if we thought that way, it would be borderline gambling. And that's not what you do.
That's not what you do.
That's not what you do. We're in our sixth decade of our business. So we cannot adopt that mentality. So either invest in a portfolio or invest in services that organically serve the business itself. This way you preserve the integrity of the business and you also preserve the integrity of the startups.
I think that's a very interesting perspective. I'm going to warn the organizers. We're going to go about 5 minutes over. So please don't send the bodyguards yet. So Adil, how do families then invest? Because let's assume there's a couple of startups in the room and perhaps they want family offices or family businesses to be their investors. As Halima said, as Ali said, family enterprises look at different things from your conventional VC investor. What should such a startup consider when they approach a family office or a family business?
Thank you very much. I don't think many people will like my answer. So
that's why you're here, Adil, and you're strong enough to take this like, so it's fine.
So first of all, for family businesses, I ask them to manage their money first before looking at venturing into the greatest and the newest thing. They need to secure 60 to 70% or even 80% of their income coming from yield. I say yield, that is, debt, equity, real estate, whatever is actually making that cash coming in every month or every quarter and making sure that check goes out to the families. They secure that and put it in a place. Then I say to them around 10 to 15%, you can go for private equity transaction, but predominantly revenue or EBITDA positive businesses. So these are not really startups. Those are a bit mature businesses. They are EBITDA positive, and they have a proven business. If you are going to go the route of startups, it should be confined within less than 5% of your wealth as a family. That is a gamble. Yeah? And what I always say, spray and pray. The reality is 85% of people have their money in banks doing nothing. Why is that? Because they've gambled at a point in time. They put in so much in one thing that they felt it's the greatest idea. It failed because 9 out of 10 will fail. 9 out of 10 will fail. And they lost that money and they thought, you know what, this is not for me.
Nobody here will fail, by the way. If you're a startup, you're not in the 9 out of 10.
Yeah. So realistically speaking, then you have to deal with the statistics. It is very revealing to realize that there are statistics that you have to deal with. And if 9 out of 10 will fail within the first 3 years, what will you do? You have to spray and pray. Some of these startups, though, have strategic contributions to your main line of businesses where you can reduce the risk.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And these ones should attract your attention more so than the greatest idea that will become the unicorn.
Mm-hmm.
I think the better approach is you spray and pray. Some of these ideas are really relevant to your business. You can enhance the risk levels of these ideas, can contribute. You can, worst to worst, make your capital back and add value knowledge to the family. And these are the ones that you'll host and take care of.
So if we turn this around, perhaps, and we're going to close with our final question in a minute. So if you're a startup and you're looking to raise funds from family businesses or family offices, I think what's very important based on our conversation here is that you understand what family offices and family businesses are looking for, and that you look at what industry is this company in? Is my technology, is my company perhaps strategically of interest, like Halima said, like Adil said, like Abir said? Maybe it could be more than just a financial relationship. And I think if you hear what our guests today have said, is that they're looking far beyond the 18-month return on investment, right? Abir?
Yeah, I just wanted to say. So, people buy from people.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have all the statistics, and they mean a lot so that you understand what you're doing. But people buy from people. And if I believe in you and what you're doing and what you're building and what you're saying, and you've put real value into your business, then I'm open to that conversation. And it's in the industry that I come from is incredibly niche. We build luxury yachts and boats. We have to build a relationship with every client that we're buying from, because they're coming in and putting in millions of dollars, right? So one of the things that I've learned through this is that people buy from people, and that's across the board. So whether they're buying your business or they're buying your product, what they're buying is you. And you have to have that built into your business. You have to show the value.
Well, actually, you've anticipated my last question. Thank you very much for kicking it off. I think what would be lovely is if we can do a final tour here. And if you could kind of give us some learning points that you've had from your own career that could benefit entrepreneurs in the room. Let's start with you, Halima.
First of all, I want us to steer away from the 9 out of 10 businesses fail. Statistics may say so, but let's imagine that does not exist, okay? When you have a startup, what demand are you filling? What is your message? Why are you starting this business? Make sure that the demand is there. Do your research, do your due diligence. Because probably if 9 out of 10 businesses fail, they haven't done their research. So before starting anything, spend a year, 2 years, 3 years. Do your due diligence, see where the demand is. Study the demography, and see if this is worth it. If it doesn't, then start again. Don't make one failed business after another failed business because you did not do your research. Because if there's a demand and this demand aligns with whatever you have to offer, go for it. You might go through a learning curve, or you might succeed. Either way, you won't lose.
Thank you very much, Halima. Sorry, Adil, your statistics are killing us here. Avir, go ahead.
So I think if I was to succinctly kind of wrap up what I'm trying to say is, if you have a startup, put value into it, be present and be accessible to your clients and to your employees, build your business so that it is sustainable and it has longevity, and think about it towards the future. Do not build it to cash out. And what turns it into a family business, and what I learned from speaking to people within our industry, which always fail when they go IPO. In boat building, go look it up. IPO means failure. The most successful boat builder in our industry is now in their, I believe, 6th generation. And what the CEO told me once is, first you have to decide who is family. Not everybody is family. And so build that into your system by building proper corporate structure and corporate governance. And so build with an eye towards the future, not an eye towards cashing out. And if you end up with a business that has very high value and it ends up selling to somebody else, that's fine, but don't have that as your goal.
Thank you, Abir. Ali, any wisdom from you?
So I'm going to steer away from the family business side and focus on the entrepreneurship side. I have to disagree with Halima when it comes to taking 2 to 3 years to do your homework, because the ship will sail. I mean, if you're looking at a certain business or a certain venture, put in the hours, work harder than everyone else, and make sure you're very, very quick, because we live in a very competitive market, in a very competitive environment. And by the time, if you take too long to do your homework, the person next door is going to do the business, be successful, and it's too late. Don't be afraid of failing, but make sure you learn from your failures and learn from your mistakes. Don't try not to repeat those mistakes in your next venture. But the most important thing has to be hard work. It won't come without it.
Thank you so much. So part 2 of this panel is going to be a lively debate. I think we'll do something tomorrow. Adil, go ahead. Sorry, Halima. Yes, of course. Rebuttal.
And we'll start with, we will agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree. I like it. Because otherwise they will kick us out if we keep going. Go ahead, Adil.
I think in the next panel, would knives be allowed? We'll have
some swords or anything.
Good. I think I would say, because I'm probably the oldest of all, be careful of hypes. you hear, it's not that if you hear a lot of people talking about a subject, that does not make it a real subject. So, and more so than less, they are only hypes. And how do you know if a hype is a hype? If you, whereby it goes back to Halima's also statement, and many of my colleagues. Do you really understand the problem? Is there a problem to be resolved? And gosh, how shocked do I get on the number of times that I speak to entrepreneurs or whoever has a great idea or even established businesses. And I would say, what is the problem that you are helping resolve? And many a times they wouldn't know the problem. Because the problems have to be really basic. Really, really basic. And it's not about what others are saying, and not about the hype and how glamorous, and this guy has made that money, that guy has made that. Many of these guys are in jail.
Okay, so we really need to stop now.
Okay. you know, allow me to just end it with one statement. Many people ask me, who's your role model? I say, you don't want to be my role model because they are in jail. So my role model is research and identifying the problem and adding to humanity.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Adil. Thank you so much. Thank you. I think you understand why I said from the beginning this is going to be a longer panel. Thank you so much, Halima, Abir, Ali, and Adil, for adding so much value to us. And thank you for being a fantastic audience and being patient with us. Thank you very much and enjoy this session.